What's up, everybody? It's Stephen Pacheco, also known as Steph the Pharaoh. Today, I'm here with a longtime friend, Steven Flores-Michel. We're here at Western Pioneer. Shout out to Scott Hanley for allowing us to use his facility today. We're in Fresno. I wanted to connect with my buddy. It's been a long time, and mainly because he's a loan originator out here in Fresno for Western Pioneer, and he has a lot of knowledge on the mortgage industry. You know, if you're looking into buying your home, investment property, you need to talk to him to get the details. But Steven, brother, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for carving out the time to shoot the podcast. I've been wanting you on the show for a while, and it's episode 33.
Wow.
Episode 33.
Making way, making progress.
Yeah,
it's always good to see.
Always moving the needle forward, trying to, you know what I mean? That's the main goal. But no, I brought you on the podcast. I want to talk a little bit about, like I said, the mortgage industry. Specifically, we've known each other now for over a decade, if you think about it.
11 years. I was just telling somebody.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah, he's been
time flies.
Since, 2011?
Yeah, shoot. And what's crazy is, I mean, I'll tell you, you know, you and I know each other, like I said, very long time. But the thing for me, and I'm sure yourself, like, I keep in touch with everybody, but at the same time, like, there's only sometimes a select few that are on that, like, same wavelength of just grinding and working and pushing, you know, moving the needle forward.
Pounding the pavement, man. Pounding the pavement.
I love that, pounding the pavement. And it's crazy because not only have we known each other, but we've actually worked together in the past too.
Yes, we have.
That was quite the experience as well. We'll get into that a little later. But yeah, man, again, pleasure having you.
Thank you for having me. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Steven Flores-Michel, loan originator out of Fresno, California. I actually can work in all of California. Most of my business is in the Central Valley, but we are expanding to Los Angeles. Stay tuned.
Hey, stay tuned for that.
Stay tuned for that. Moves are coming. Most definitely, if you have any questions when it comes down to buying a home, that kind of stuff, don't hesitate to talk to your loan originator, but I'm always ears for everybody, especially new clients. Always taking them.
Now, I was talking with a friend of mine that, you know, had kind of been dabbling like, you know, I think I want to look at houses. I want to do these things. What's the first thing that you would say for somebody that's even considering buying a home? You know, because most of the time, you know, they either know somebody that's in real estate, right? But again, I think sometimes would it be best for them to like get a pre-approval or talk to a loan originator prior to doing all of that?
So everyone kind of jumps the gun when they say, hey, I need a pre-approval to look at a home, or even just the home buying process. Because believe it or not, a pre-approval is not like that. Sometimes it takes like 1 or 2 days, and in most cases a week or so, just depending on how the file looks. And so one of the ways we screen a lot of clients and just have a conversation is I tell everybody, like, hey, look, they changed the name on it just because of, you know, black and whiteness on paper and have true definitions, but the better term is pre-qualify. Can you pre-qualify for a home? Which leads to what I like to call is your numbers, essentially. So the pre-qual that's where we screen you without really having to run your credit.
The hard inquiry,
where we don't really look at your documents. We don't really I typically don't. It's more like a 10-minute conversation, like, hey, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? Does it make sense for you to buy right now? How does the work history look? How does the credit look? And, you know, have you put money aside to buy a home? Because at the end of the day, you need money no matter what. Whether you're using a zero down, any program that says, hey, you no money out of pocket, you're still going to have to come out of pocket.
Oh, okay. So there's always those closing costs, if you will.
Closing costs and just to kind of get into it, the initial deposit, or EMD as in our industry we call it, it's 1%. Typically, it's 1% of the sales price.
Okay.
And so that's a good faith deposit, saying, hey, if I take 30 days of your time and this does not go through, the seller gets to keep the deposit as, you know, damages and stuff like that.
Okay. I've not experienced that, but like having to give the money for the good faith deposit with, what I mean by that is like when I got a house, I ended up going with it. So it went towards the loan, not like, I think that eliminates people from just wasting time, like you said.
Right. And so the other part of it too is like, people also like forget that it goes to your closing costs and down payment. So it's not like you
just losing the
money out, right?
Only if you want to waste time.
Right. Exactly. If you want to waste time, if you look at a $500,000 home, that's a $5,000 EMD, you know.
Yeah.
By all means, but ultimately, back to saying pre-approved, if you are looking at buying a home, or if it's on your mind, the best way to go about it is, hey, have the conversation, do the pre-qual. Usually it leads to an application, not a credit pull, but basically, hey, the pre-qual conversation gets on paper.
Okay.
Now I'm looking at your work history. Now I'm looking at a pay stub. Now I'm actually,
diving into the file specifically.
Diving into where you keep the cash, whether you keep it on the couch or in the actual bank. How are your deposits? You're just depositing random numbers. Are you cashing a check, getting cash, and depositing half of it?
That's a no-no, right?
That's a big no-no, because essentially then the underwriter will start saying, hey, look, where's this guy's paycheck? How does he get paid? And so it does become an issue, and those are all things like I tell clients, don't worry about that stuff. If I need to address it, I'll address it with you, but for the most part, I can work around that stuff. There's solutions to every problem.
Okay. And how long have you been in the space?
In this space now, it's my third year.
Dang, time flies. I remember when you just started. I remember having the conversation with you, and you're like, Steph, what do you think, man? And you were bouncing the idea, remember?
Right. And so
I'm glad I was close enough where you can give me that call and just ask me for my opinion. I think that's pretty cool.
Right.
Really
and so
cool.
For those of you who don't know, previously I was in the car business. I had like nice little golden handcuffs. At one point
I was out there too, actually.
Just to throw numbers out there to people, and if you guys are curious enough about the car business, I had the golden handcuffs, man. I was making between 15 and 20 grand a month, but I had no weekends off, and I felt like I was a slave to the building, and so definitely had no social life out of it. But I tell you what, those checks were nice. It's hard to leave those checks, and so this industry kind of it goes back to it, essentially. I made 15, 20 grand a month, but again, I was tied to that desk, and that was kind of the cap. I mean, every now and then we'd get those, blip it, outliers where you make 25K or just some absurd number. But that's kind of like the cap of it. Like, you're at the mercy of what the store produces and that kind of stuff. Here in this industry, I mean, the sky's the limit. I mean,
there is no cap.
There is no cap.
It's like, how hard do you want to work?
How hard do you want to work? How many clients can you go out and get, or how many families can you help? That's really how it should be said. Because it's black and white. I mean, every loan officer can do what other loan officers can, but it goes back to it,
work ethic, really.
Work ethic, but also sports. I tell everybody, if everyone wears the same shoes, they're not all going to produce the same or give you the same, the same performance. Same thing in this industry, in this space. We all have access to all the products and everything, but at the end of the day, how smooth can the transaction be? How communicate, how.
Do you feel like a lot of your past experience contributes to your success in this industry?
Yes. The biggest thing I've had to maximize is because a lot of my past experience, I sold life insurance for a year.
I remember that.
I learned how to build a database. Obviously my 10 plus years in the sales side of stuff is because people will come into this industry without any sales background. And
that's hard, I would imagine, right?
That's crazy
or at least
hard.
If they have maybe customer service, I think they can.
Here's the thing. Here's how I explain it to people. Look, in customer service, you're not really directly asking for the business. They're already giving it to you, and so all they want is a service.
I see.
Versus on the sales side of stuff, you're actually having to sell something, and now you have to ask for the business, or you have to kind of, hey, look, pull some answers out of your client.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's like people don't want to tell you the hard things, or
they don't want to ask the hard things either.
They don't want to ask the hard things as well. One of the big prime examples is sometimes, a loan officer will go over like 3 different loan scenarios and 3 different payments. And they forget to ask, well, which one are you leaning towards to, or like, what do you think? They just kind of go, okay.
Give them
they just give the information and go, okay, have a good one. Next thing you know, they're getting shopped and things like that. Which shopping isn't a bad thing, but at that point when you're getting shopped, you might get shopped with somebody else who's going to dive into the numbers and explain to people why certain things are a certain way. At that point, it doesn't matter what the numbers say. They're like, well, this guy just told me everything. He's explaining to me in thorough, and now I understand why I'm paying so much,
I see. So it comes down to like a fine line of like educating your client, but also not being afraid to guide them and show them, and kind of pull your experience to show them what you feel like is needed, right?
And one of the things too is one of the ways you can make money in this industry is either the bank pays you or the client pays you to do the loan. And so a lot of loan officers are afraid to put that number out there in front of a client.
What do you mean?
Meaning, for example, on the average loan, most people make around 2.5% of what the loan amount is. Okay. And so 80% of scenarios will have basically where the bank pays the loan originator. And so that's, at the end of the day, the client's paying for it.
Yeah.
And the way they're paying for it is in the interest rate. So whatever the rate is in the current market, it could be 6.5, it could be 7, it could be, whatever the case, whatever loan scenario you pick. That's what that means. Meaning like you're paying for it with the interest rate, but naturally the cash out of pocket is a lot less.
Oh, okay.
Which is what everyone tries to strive for, right?
So it helps out the client.
Yes and no. Here's the thing though, like for example, I'm not going to throw a loan scenario or product like that stuff, just to kind of throw out an interest rate. Let's say that loan scenario where the bank is paying the originator to do the loan, let's call that 7%. Okay, just to kind of keep it close to whatever's out there on TVs and stuff like that. This is just for illustration purposes as well. It's not for...
Okay. It's not verbatim. It's not your situation.
It's not your situation.
Talk to Steven. Link in the bio.
Link in the bio, right? For example, let's say that scenario calls where the bank pays the originator 7% interest rate. Well, on the flip side, let's say the client's going to pay me to do the loan instead of the bank. The bank's just funding it. That interest rate might come back to 5.5%.
Oh, okay.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
So yes, it's more money out of pocket, but now the payment might be lower by $200.
Okay.
And so they're either one, like, and that's why I go back to it. It's like, they're afraid to sell that part of it or that type of loan because of, hey, look,
payments higher, payments lower, but the interest rate's like
the cash out of hand is a lot higher, and more so like you disclose to the client how much I'm going to make. So if it's like if the property is being sold or the loan amount's like for $300,000, it's going to say on there, what is that, $7,500 or so. And so like
sometimes people are scared of that.
They're scared of that and scared to show that number. And so like, and having that conversation can be tough. And it goes back to it. Like, just because you're in the service industry, you're not selling. But now a salesperson, someone like me, I come from the car business, hey, look, your down payment's $10,000 on this $120,000 Yukon.
So thinking about that situation, the one thing I loved about you, so we used to work at the time, it was Kitahara Buick GMC here in Fresno, and Steven showed me how to become a better salesperson in the car business. I had dabbled in it before. I had worked at the Selma Auto Mall. You were in it prior to me, about a year, maybe 2 years. And so by the time I came across, you and Max got me plugged in at that time, Kitahara. And I remember coming in, but I remember, man, you would always have these clients and you would tell them, you'd set realistic expectations. Everybody wants to come in and put $1,000 down and walk out with a $200 payment, I feel like, on a Denali or, you know what I'm saying?
Right,
like they come in with these unrealistic freaking goals. And I remember you telling me like, tell them this, man, they're not going to afford, like, look at what you're given. There's no, but I was also at the time scared to be like, hey, I can't, I can't get you this. But that's cool that you're able to navigate that because I feel like in any industry, I mean, you've, again, dabbled around life insurance, the auto industry, the loan industry now, but you looked at all of these different things and you're able to kind of take that experience and, I mean, it's, again, brought you to where you are today. And like I said, I feel like in any industry, you get those that are scared to ask for that sale or they're scared of those numbers because they're like, they call it shopping with their own pockets. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
People that are not used to those higher tickets or dealing with numbers like that, it freaks them out. And so they're like, they probably get all clammy and they're like, dang, I don't want to tell them this. But I feel like you've always been a person of knowing your own value ever since I've known you.
Right.
And I really feel like knowing that and having that like self-worth, you're able to like, be like, hey, this is what it is, and just kind of have that authority, and not in a bad way, but in a very good way on your end. You know what I mean?
Right. And so, just like you said, shopping with your own pockets, and at the end of the day, too, I've always told myself, or I learned this in the car business as well, past sales experience. That's why I said, customer service is not sales experience.
Absolutely.
This is a good example of it as well. It's like a lot of people get nervous when it comes to a monthly payment on a mortgage, whether it's $2,000, $3,000, or even like $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month. They start getting nervous delivering that payment to the client. And so, like, at the end of the day, it's like, hey, look,
like on more expensive houses, right?
Yeah, more expensive
that
house.
much.
Yeah, more expensive.
I was like, dang.
Right.
That is crazy. But
I don't want to throw numbers out there because then I have to throw a loan scenario.
Yeah, I get it.
But for the most part, again, just for illustration purposes, payments can get up there pretty quickly, especially in today's market with,
Let's actually kind of tap into that. I mean, I'll let you finish up that thought. But today's market, everybody's always asking, is it a good time to buy? Is it a good time to shop? You get all these different scenarios. You're someone that's in the industry daily, like literally daily. It's not like someone's coming to ask me because I'm like, well, I mean, I would buy. But given every scenario, talk to me a little bit about like today in the market and how it's changed. I mean, you've been in the industry now 3 years.
Right. So today's market, I tell everybody it's always a good time to buy. The best deal is when you like it the most. That's the realistic part about it. But today's market, I would say it's always a good time to buy. But let's kind of backtrack a little bit. When COVID hit and interest rates got really low, how much more were you paying for a house then? And it's like, and by that I mean like you were having to offer $30,000-$40,000 over asking on the list price, and part of it was too because payments were lower because interest rates were lower and everything was more affordable.
Everybody can afford it,
paper. Now at that point, you were like, your biggest gripe was like, well, I don't want to put 10 or 20,000, if it doesn't appraise out of pocket, and cash was king at that point. Fast forward till today, I mean, it's kind of here, but that kind of came and went as far as appraisal gets. Now it's more of like you're just competing with like 3 or 4 offers, which is a normal market, and so you can actually get a really good deal now. And the reason I say that is if you don't look at the interest rate on the paper, and you really like the house, you would find that you can get money back as far as seller concession, and which wasn't around. And so now,
for those that don't know, and I kind of don't know what seller concession is, elaborate on that a little bit.
Seller concession, it's a fancy term. I should have said it's basically money that the seller's giving you money back to kind of lower your closing costs.
Like a rebate, or would it be?
Kind of like a rebate. Like a rebate. So it's basically they're giving you up to, it depends on your loan amount, but in some cases it can be $10,000, $15,000 back to kind of help close the deal on the house. For example.
Does that come out of the seller's pocket, or
it comes out of the seller's pocket? So that's also part of negotiation. So like instead of coming in and saying, hey, I'm going to offer $20,000 less on this property, well, hey, and now I'm just going to offer list price and whatever is advertised for, and tell them, hey, give me like 10, 15 so I can buy down this interest rate, or I can reduce the amount I come out of pocket.
I see.
And so at that point, what you really should look at is like, hey, look, I'm getting this property at a discount, whether my offer says it or not, because that seller's giving you money back to get into this house. And now you're either trying to get a better interest rate, which is what most people do these days. Once I educate them and show them, hey, look, this property has only been on the market for 20 days, a little bit longer than most houses. They've had, 0 offers, or it came back on escrow. So they're motivated sellers. And so I tell people, offer them, a little bit more and see if they can send you a seller concession. The only caveat is, or back end of it is, the property has to appraise.
So if it
the value has to be there. You can't just offer more and
not get the value.
Right,
that makes sense.
And that's on the lending side. But it's still a nice feature, and most of my deals have that working, and it's because I put them into this. And I mean, there's different programs out there and that kind of stuff, and I just kind of tell everybody, it's like the best deal could be to you is, do you want the lowest amount of money out of pocket? Do you want the lowest payment? Do you want the lowest interest rate?
Like what's important to them?
What's most important to you? And so, do you want to pay this property off faster and get the best rate? All those things have different numbers. And that's why I go back to it, hey, know your numbers.
Yeah, and I mean, that's powerful though too, because you look at it from every angle. And I feel like in the time I've known you, you've done this in everything. Like even the car industry, you were like, hey, what's important to you? Like really getting down deep to the root of why they're buying or what interests them. Yeah. And at that time, man, when you were teaching me everything, I think I was just also scared to like ask those questions. And it took, having you as a friend to be like, hey, do it this way, try this, you know what I'm saying? And it was really cool. I've taken a lot from that. And I think today, I miss working with you,
Right. Hey, you know what? I tell you what, if you can pass your tests, I welcome anybody. I tell everybody, pass your tests and I can train you on it. You just have to kind of be by my side and you'll see all of this happening. But I currently have 6, 7 LOs under my team.
Congratulations, that's awesome.
I just got an assistant going. So there's things working here, and ultimately, at the end of the day, it's being able to be in the industry, being able to be curious enough about why certain things are a certain way. Like they're called guidelines on when financing a home. So, but to put it in like the people's terms, they're the questions that you'll ask that'll make something uncommon. Meaning, like, hey, what if I turn my primary residence where I live now into a rental and buy something else? How does that work? So the guidelines will have the answers to all of that.
Okay.
And believe it or not, anybody can look them up. It's on Google. You just have to know how to look and where to look.
Yeah. Okay.
Me on the other side is like, I've seen it so much. Either some of these things I'll have memorized, or if I don't know, I know exactly where to look and I can have the answer pretty quickly.
Okay. And so really quick, we're in this beautiful office that Western Pioneer has. The building, actually, it's off of Herndon, and is this Palm?
This is Fruit and Palm.
Fruit and Palm. We're on Herndon in Fresno. Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited. I've been here. I was here for the grand opening. We had
celebrities here.
Yeah, we had Jose Ramirez. Shout out Jose Ramirez. Scott. I mean, Scott's always showed me personally hospitality. I mean, we went to Vegas, we hung out together, we did a lot of cool things. Coming back, they always invite me out here. I wanted to highlight Western Pioneer and put them, I mean, they're already on the map, but I wanted to highlight for those that are going to be tuning in, Western Pioneer. Why come out and talk to Steven Flores at Western Pioneer? What sets you guys apart? And I know the answer, but what sets you apart from a lot of the other mortgage companies, your Wells Fargos, your Chases, like when it comes to buying a house?
Right. And so one of the best phrases I like to say is ultimately is, I heard it in the car business. We're big enough to serve you, small enough to care. And so, yeah, that's ultimately what we do. And so being in this industry, I get to see a lot of people kind of like, get emotional behind it, because at the end of the day, some people come in and they go, I want to buy a house, I have cash, I don't know if my credit's good enough, and I barely turn into a citizen or got residency here.
And stuff that touches your heart, huh?
Stuff that touches your heart, and like I've seen people tear up in front of me, and it almost gets me too. I'm like, man, because they go, I've never thought would have owned a home or been able to do this, and being able to get into the finish line.
Don't let him fool you. He's a big softie too. I know.
Very emotional.
Yeah, that's awesome though, man. I mean, I've definitely had my experiences like that, but I know like the type of person you are, so I know that you truly want to serve. I feel like that's why you're on the show. That's why I bring you on. We have a lot of the same values. I've known you this long. You know what I'm saying? And, I know that you always look at what's best for the client. I mean, shoot, I sent my mother. You helped her refinance a couple years ago now. I mean, she had a variable interest rate for years, got smacked with the loans back then.
I'm glad she got it now.
I know, we had been bugging her for a long time, and I'm like, go see my buddy Steven. You remember him at the car dealership when they bought their truck back in like 2016, 17.
That's right.
And shoot, a matter of fact, going even further back, before I started working at the dealership with you, I bought my truck from you.
That's
my
right,
Canyon.
the Canyon.
So this guy, I'm telling you got to talk to him. He's gonna put you first.
You leased it as well. I remember that.
Yeah, I missed that truck, man. I missed that little truck. It was pretty cool.
that lease ended up working out for you too, huh?
Yeah, I loved it. The only thing is that I drive too much, so I hit the miles. At that time, I was living in San Diego, so
when
stayed here.
When you bought it, I don't think you had moved to San Diego yet.
No, I was living here. Yeah,
you were still living here, and at that time, your lifestyle, it worked for you.
Oh yeah, I mean, my work was
down the street,
5 minutes away.
Yeah, it worked.
5 minutes away.
And even then, we fluffed it up. But I don't think you even got over your miles. It
wasn't until I moved. Yeah, it wasn't until I moved, because I was always traveling back to Fresno. It's funny how that worked. I left to get out of not just Fresno, but mainly the Valley. Wanted to see what it was like. And then when I was down there, I was over here every weekend, which was like, it was kind of the same thing.
Right. Common misconception is the first thing right off the gate is people think we're actually hungry to pull people's credit. And I was like, it's not the game. Definitely don't look forward to doing that. It's not what I'm hunting for, just to pull credit. And the other thing is too, people think their credit's gonna completely change 180 if we pull their credit. That's the other part of it. I tell people, no, we're talking 2 or 3 points.
Okay, yeah.
We're not talking
And I mean, isn't there a rule as well? Like if once they run credit, don't quote me, I'm asking you, but once they run credit, they technically have about 14 days where they can run with other processes that are for example, they're shopping with you, they're shopping with I don't know, Chase, for example. You know, they can run credit as long as it's within 24 hours. Does that count as one inquiry technically, or no? Is that false?
Yes. Actually, no, it's false because they will have their own inquiry, but they will pull the exact same score I pulled.
Okay.
And so at that point, credit's already triggered saying, hey, this person's shopping for a rate. And so Chase will have their own inquiry, but the score will be exactly the same what I pulled, line by line, everything.
Okay.
And so that's a misconception. People think like if other people pull your credit. Now here's the other thing though.
Like that it'll change every time?
Right.
Okay.
No, it only changes once. But here's the other thing. Like I believe, and this is not like, you know, black and white set in stone. I believe after 3 pulls, then it dings you again, but you won't get dinged again as far as I go off the gate. The next time your score refreshes, for example, if you've ever been car shopping, and I know somebody's experienced this before, they go car shopping, their credit may have not been the best even prior to the dealership pulling the credit, but for example, they had to shop around with like 7 or 10 different banks to try to get the loan done. Or clients won't know that, but they just see it next refresh. They just see, hey, dude, this dealership shop my credit around, and so each bank having their own inquiry will
affect it.
It affected it. And the same thing in the mortgage space, meaning like, hey, if you come to me and you go to Chase and then you go to one other guy, you probably will be fine. But let's say you do that and then you go on the internet and then next thing you know you get 10 phone calls and you let every single person pull your credit, then you're racking up the inquiries. Then you're going to see the score take a hit. Credit repair is an option though.
You guys partner with credit repair.
Yeah, we do it here, and so those things can be removed, especially if it was unintentional or you didn't know. More importantly, I tell everybody don't be afraid to ask the questions, whether it's, you know, your first time shopping for a home, second, third, or even whatever the case you're trying to do. Yeah, don't be afraid to ask the questions, because we can't think what you're thinking, you know, we can't hear what you're thinking, you know. And
that's actually cool though that you guys have that service. I mean, that's like somewhat of a niche service to be able to say, hey, well, if they don't qualify, we can help you get qualified later on. You know what I'm saying, with this process. What do you guys, like, how do you guys help with that?
So we just provide the service at the end of the day. And so the main reason the service is provided is because we're looking out, essentially, we're looking out for the client. I can tell you so many times where a client comes to me and they go, oh yeah, I got like 20, 50, even 50 grand in the bank, but my credit's bad and I have a really good job. And I just made a video about it today on my
Sounds like me a couple years ago.
Well, I just made a video about it today on my Instagram. You'll see it sometime this month or next month. But for the most part, I tell everybody the only thing that really holds a file back a client from getting pre-approved, 6 months, or it makes it longer, makes the process longer, is credit. Money can, you can get a gift, you can, there's different ways to come up with the money and that kind of stuff.
For like down payments.
For down payments and cash to close, things like that. And income, at the end of the day, you're going to make what you make until you get a raise or a promotion,
Okay, yeah.
And so a credit was basically what will hold back a file, usually 9 times out of 10.
I was going to ask you, just because we didn't really mention it, I don't know if it's something that you can mention, but talking about credit, what is like the minimum that you would say like that would be sufficient for somebody to start applying for, a home?
Okay, I can mention it. The better answer would be like, how motivated and how ready is someone to buy a home? And the reason I say that is because there's different breaks in credit that control how expensive your interest rate and your cash to close is going to be and your payment. And so just like anything else, if you have 800 credit score, obviously you're going to get the best rate. You have more flexibility, and naturally it's going to be less expensive to do stuff versus if you have like a 590 is kind of like the point where kind of like anything more than that, it's really going to get expensive.
Yeah. Because
naturally you can pretty much have almost any credit score, but you get ready to fork out the money,
Yeah. It's more risky, right?
It's more risk. They just want either more down, or the interest rate's going to be higher. It's going to cost more money, things like that.
That's why you said how motivated they are, because if they have, troubled credit. I've been there. If they have that, it's like it's going to require more. So then motivation. I see what you're saying.
Motivation.
Good. Yeah.
The pocket is equivalent to motivation.
Yep. No, I totally understand that. So, how motivated are you, right? I know a lot of you guys out there. I constantly get questions like that. People just ask me for my opinion, but I'm like, I always point them to you, honestly. Like, I'm just like, talk to my buddy Steven, man. He's going to tell you straight up. He's not going to sugarcoat it,
Notice how he doesn't give me the phone number because he knows, hey, get him on the phone.
He's going to call you. He's going to call you.
So
I have to ask them. I don't want to waste your time. I have to ask them, like, how motivated are you? If you're legit, I'll send you there right now. We'll go. You know what I'm saying? But again, everybody's always asking that, like, do you think it's a good time to buy? Do you think? And I'm like, I would buy, you know.
Right.
But my situation's a bit different than yours, right? Like for me, I'll say I took advantage, bro. When COVID happened, I got the duplex. I lived in a unit. I took the forbearance. I was living there. Luckily, my tenant, he was helping me out. He was a great tenant. I had a great tenant. He could have totally said, hey, Steph, I'm not going to pay you during COVID because everybody was, but he was like, I'm going to pay you, man. And I'm like, dang, you're a real one, bro.
Yeah.
You're a real one. So he continued to pay me. And so I got really lucky, but I took advantage right there. I was, transitioning jobs, and I'm just like, I'm gonna take it. So at that time, I think I stopped like beginning of 2021. So we're coming up on, I think, how long do you have to have, by the way? Because I've been telling you that I want to refinance, this is a side note, you guys can hear what I'm trying to do, but want to do an ADU at my apartment complex.
Oh, okay.
In the back, completely renovate that garage and turn it into either a 1-in-1 or a 2-in-1.
Gotcha.
But I'm waiting because I know I have equity, but I want to do either like a HELOC. Do you guys do HELOCs now for those interested? Maybe
we do HELOCs.
Hey. When did you guys introduce that? Because you didn't always have them, did you?
I don't market it that much because at the end of the day, one of the biggest things I'm realizing, especially when clients approach me about it, is money's expensive whether you do a HELOC or a home loan.
Yeah.
Even if you have an inexpensive home loan on your home now, ultimately what it's going to lead to is a refinance.
Really?
Hear me out.
I'm listening. No.
Hear me out. It really comes down to how much money you want to pull out. And so keep in mind, the HELOC, what most people don't know, it's basically a credit card. So if you follow interest rates on a credit card,
they can be 17.
Could
they be that high?
They can move. What I'm getting at is
they're variable.
They're variable interest rates.
Is it variable based on the money drawn at that time?
Everything plays a factor. Your credit, how much money you pulled out, when you pulled it out, how much is owed, the whole 9 yards. Yeah. And so they can use whatever they want against you, and it's whatever. It's
so essentially
prime plus
the higher
market
the limit.
Plus And one of the more car lingo is like it's prime plus.
for those that know
the tax receipt or anything. Dang. Like anything you buy, it's price point plus.
I see what you're saying.
And so what I tell everybody is like, look, let's say your mortgage. Again, it's not real numbers, just for illustration purposes.
Not financial advice.
Not financial advice. Yeah. Let's say your mortgage right now, you have a low interest rate of like 3%, and you want, like, hey, I don't want to touch that rate.
That's like gold right now, bro.
That's like gold, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hear me out though. And let's say that payment on, when you bought that home is only like $1,600 on that home. Well, now you want to pull a HELOC. Let's say you want to pull roughly $100,000 out of that property.
It's like almost my situation, literally.
Yeah. Well, it's almost everybody's situation, but it's not real scenarios.
Yeah.
Say you want to pull out $100,000. Well, that $100,000, the monthly payment on that bad boy is probably going to be right around between, just depending on the credit and whatever this. Let's call it $1,100 a month. Let's see what I'm saying. Like, now your $1,600 turns into $2,700 a month.
To me, so for what I'm trying to do, like, I totally understand, because like for everybody, they're like, oh dang, they might be. For me, I think that would make sense. Maybe it just depends on when I'm ready.
Well, let me ask you this then. Let's say you just flat out do a cash out refi. Okay, I don't know if you can. I don't know the scenario, that kind of stuff. Let's say you just do a flat out cash out refi, and even though you go up to like a 6% or even a 7%,
I think I'm like at 3.25, 3.
Whatever the case is, and your payment only ends up being $2,200 a month. Which one does make more sense?
Oh, yeah, that one. See, I didn't know about doing a cash out refi. Yeah. Interesting. That's why you talk to somebody like him.
Yeah. So that's why I kind of put it in perspective, and I ask everybody, like, look, you know, yeah, you're looking at, I'm locking in this rate, but ultimately what's going to end up happening in the future is you're going to want to pay off both that one, and you're going to have to just cash out refi.
That makes sense.
And it doesn't mean, like, what I'm saying, there's no limits on how many cash out or, you know, refinances you can do on a property. I mean, if the numbers are there, you can do it, you know.
Do you get people that refinance multiple times? I mean, maybe not right now, but were you getting those in the past with the better rates?
Just to kind of put in perspective, people who actually keep their properties more than, 5-6 years, because that's like the average before they sell it and get a second home, a bigger home.
Try to like take the game.
Yeah, if they keep it longer than 5 or like 10 or 15 years, most people will refinance a property in that lifetime 3 to 4 times.
Wow.
And that's just kind of putting matters in front of people and numbers.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many excellent plays that you can make when you refinance if you do it wisely. Again, not financial advice, but I love all of my family, but sometimes they would refinance for illegitimate reasons. The new car, I don't. I mean,
it's at the end of the day, it's your money, man.
It is.
Use it however you want.
Yeah, no, I know. Same thing. I just. I always just try to think of like, what's going to make me the most money? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how I think, because I just don't like to be tied to any one thing. And I'm just like, man. But no, that's actually really good information, just because I think within the next 6 months, for sure, like, I will be ready. I don't know how long, for those that may be on a forbearance, if they were, how long do you have to wait until you refinance after that? Is it 2 years?
You just have to be caught up now on your payments.
Okay. 100%, that's there.
Yeah, as long as you're caught up on your payments and you're good, then you're pretty much good to go.
Perfect. I think it's been like over a year and a half now. Yeah. So just been
they're constantly, the guidelines constantly changing on how it works, and like sometimes I'll have to dive back in there before I put the loan in there. But as of right now, as far as I remember, and I could be wrong. Don't come for my neck.
Yeah.
As long as your forbearance is like paid up to date and you're good to go.
Yeah, no. So like, I'm not even no longer on that anymore. That was like during the COVID pandemic for the period of time.
Initially, it was 3 payments.
Oh, okay.
You've made 3 payments and you're back.
Oh, shoot. Yeah. Shoot. At the time, I remember I had asked, like, right out of COVID, because my payments were starting again. I'm like, hey, can I refinance? And then you're like, nah. Well, I think you asked me, and then I was like, oh no, I took advantage of the forbearance, because they didn't affect your credit, and they didn't make you make payments. And I'm like, why not?
The kickback now is like, I would tell everybody, like, if you want to do certain things, like, cash out, refi, stuff like that, you weren't making payments, so you weren't paying down the equity. And so
that's the downside.
That's the downside,
for sure.
Yeah, especially for a year or so, or how long it took.
Absolutely.
Sometimes
now,
too.
I think that's key, though. I mean, for me, just so people, they don't really need to know, but I was planning on just turning it into like an Airbnb. That's what I was thinking. I mean, I already have that going on with that unit, and I can justify $2,300. You might have sold me already on that. So we got to talk for sure. But no, man, that's quite interesting. So if you have information, or if you have, questions, all of Steven's information is going to be plugged into the link. If you're looking into getting into the industry, what would you say for anybody looking at making a transition? I know there are tons of professionals out there looking into this, real estate, looking into everything, right? Just everybody's kind of going. I mean, there's so many ways in 2023 to make money too.
Definitely. I actually made a video about this today too, is because I know people wonder. People wonder how real estate agents and loan originators get paid in the industry. Unfortunately, what we don't get the luxury of is being on payroll. Bi-weekly.
Absolutely. Yep.
Get a check every 2 weeks, and so we don't get that luxury. And so we get paid when the keys get handed to the client.
When it's all said and done.
When it's
funded,
all said and done.
Everything.
And so when you're looking at either your picture or whatever client's picture, if a client takes a year to get into a home, it takes us a year to get paid on that client.
Has that happened before?
Oh, absolutely. It happens all the time. And so
a year?
Yeah. Well, hear me out though. Let's say that client wants to start the conversation. They're okay doing an application. They're okay pulling credit. Once I do all that, maybe the pre-approval still isn't done, because maybe credit, cash, whatever the case is. Okay, I paid for the credit report, but now I'm nurturing the client. Hey, this is the game plan we're going to do. That client may take 6 months to get right, and then another 6 months to find the right house.
I see what you're saying.
And so at that point, for that specific client, it might take me a year to get paid. I provided service for a year and didn't get a paycheck until then.
I see. From what we were in before, it's way different, right?
It's way different. In the car industry, you say hi to somebody, they buy a car that day, we get paid for it the
2
next
weeks,
pay period.
3 weeks, yeah.
It could be the next day or whatever, but it's the pay period.
Let's actually talk about that a little bit, because I mean, you just said it. I mean, we're basically like 1099 contracted.
I specifically am, especially, and in this industry you can either be 1099 or W-2.
How can you be W-2 in the industry?
So it's kind of like the car business, essentially. If you remember how those checks were paid, they would pay you, a draw or hourly wage, and then they hold it against the commission. That's how 80% of branches are around right now.
Oh, really? We have big branches?
Yeah. Oh, retail shops is what we call them.
Okay.
We're on the broker channel, so we have more flexibility to do as far as on the pay side of it. 1099. I have an SCorp, and so once you make a certain amount, you definitely want to have an SCorp and know your tax liability at that point.
Absolutely. I recommend it.
100%. And so here we get paid on a 1099, so I don't really get taxes taken on my check and that kind of stuff. But also I don't get a check if I don't, hand keys to a client. Well, I don't do that, but essentially get clients to the closing table and get into the home. And so that's kind of one of those things where I kind of tell people, I was like, look, right off the gate, if you want to come into the industry, I welcome it 100%. Just know it's not for the weak. If you're used to getting a paycheck and you depend on it right now, save your pennies before you jump off ship, because especially right now,
have some leeway. Right?
Especially right now though, because right now what's happening is like, I heard a stat like some 400,000 loan originators didn't renew their license. So
400,000 in California or in nationwide?
I believe it's in California alone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because you have to pay for that, I would imagine, yearly,
I think it's nationwide.
Even if, still, that's a large number.
Yeah, it's still a large number, and so annually, but also like if you're not producing, you're not getting a paycheck. So at that point, you're just carrying a license and a liability.
So I like that you mentioned that, and let's talk a little bit about that, because let's talk about like keys to success, if you will, right? Like you and I, we've known each other. I know your work ethic, so that's again why I'm like, dude, Steven, I always like, in my mind, you're up here. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you.
No problem. Just you're a quality person to have. You know, to be associated with, to be friends with, and so tapping into that, because everywhere we've ever gone, and you specifically, you've always been successful. You've always been the cream of the crop. You GMC. Your other endeavors when you were in life insurance. You went hard, you know what I'm saying? You made the jump then, and I know, and I'm talking from experience, like me and you, we're both 1099, and so I know what it was like for me to make that mindset switch of not having the funds the next month and being like stressed out in the beginning, being like, what did I just do? Right. I don't have that nest egg coming in anymore, So talk to me a little bit about that, like making that transition. What was it like for you in the very beginning?
So in the very beginning, I actually got into the industry when it, in the nicest way possible. Anybody could have gone into the industry and done well, because interest rates were low. COVID did that. Lowered the interest rate, so everybody was trying to buy a home. Everyone was doing a refi. So there was plenty of business everywhere. So it kind of, in all intents and purposes, it fell on your lap, and you really didn't have to sell. Because no matter what you quoted them, the interest rate was going to be lower than what they had.
So it always made sense.
It always made sense. It always made sense on paper. And so when I doing that, I killed it just because I was already a salesperson, and I just maintained my database and that kind of stuff. Stayed on top of it. I can tell you, there were several months where I got like 8-9 checks in 1 month,
Dang.
And so those were good months.
Those are nice.
those are nice. Yeah, those are nice. And so I never, to say never had a month where I'm like, oh, I didn't make anything.
Yeah.
There's been one or two, but like in the sense like the previous month could have been 5 closings, and then I get 1 or 0, but follow it up with like another 5 or 6, and so there's things like that, kind of like those sales roller coasters, what most guys know.
Yeah.
You try to
level it out.
Out and just keep it consistent. And so that's kind of what I've been doing now. And, instead of just trying to do 1, 1, 5, 1, 5, and things like that, I'd rather just try to be like, 4, 4, 4, 8, and so scaling is one thing I'm learning how to do, the pain points here. But back to like the original question, is like getting into the industry. That's one thing I kind of tell everybody. It can be very lucrative, or it can be very, I'm not making money. There's 2 ends of the spectrum. It's very little in between. Those are the consistent people that have been in it for a little bit longer. And so less effort, I guess you could say, to do business.
I see what you're saying. I mean, I feel like in the industry that I'm currently in, you know, solar predominantly, it's kind of what's happening that's tightening up, you know what I'm saying? So the deals are still out there. There's still people out there that need the service, but it's like, at the same time, it's how are you going to present it to people? You know, are you going to let all of the issues and the rates, right now our rates are high too, you know what I'm saying? Are you going to let that affect everything, or are you going to still try to like present them the right service? I'm also independent, just like yourself, so I kind of have the leeway of like being able to cut out cost for people, you know what I'm saying? And so I that's why I like the whole setup that you guys have, because you have multiple like funders, right? Multiple lenders that you're able to kind of go through versus just one solid company.
Right. And so it goes back to what I was saying, broker and retail. Retail branches, essentially, it's like going to Wells Fargo. It's one underwriting guideline. It's either they will or won't do the loan. On the broker channel over here, I can shop it around. I have like 5 different banks that I can like, hey, look, if you don't want it, just send it over here. Or if you're giving me a hard time with this client for no reason, I'll just pull it and send it over here. You know, it's not that simple, but you know, I can do that. I have the power to do that. And so now, because I've been in the industry longer, I can screen it a lot, you know, more thoroughly. And so it's easy for me to decide what bank I want to send it to. That's going to give me like the quickest close, but also like, you know, no fair enough rate, things like that. Because you know, it goes back to what everyone always says: you get what you pay for. You know, just because you get the best rate doesn't mean you're gonna get the best service. You know, I mean, you can get the best rate and the best service. It's out there. Don't
always sacrificing something, right?
Yeah, right away. Don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, you know, I tell everybody, pick your service over your, you know, over anything else. Like, don't overpay, but I always say, you know, the best experiences and like you feel better about your product and what you paid for if you get the best service.
So who, like leaning more towards that, the best service, who would you recommend, or what? Is there any companies that you'd recommend that you have that you like lean more towards, or can you not say that?
So I can and cannot, and the reason I won't is because I get to decide where it goes. So the service comes from me. You guys never, the client never really deals with it. Oh,
so you're saying everywhere else where they go, you get what you, okay.
Right.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Right. If you go online and you don't know this person.
Rocket Mortgage, whatever.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm only saying that because don't come after me. I didn't have the best experience personally. You know, I called him up prior to buying my duplex, before you were in the industry, or else I would have went through him. Before, it was like 2019, and I already knew what I wanted. I'd been doing research for like 3 years. I knew that you can get a, you know, duplex, triplex, or a quad or a 4-unit in the same kind of like loan parameters. Well, I mean, I don't know all the intricacies, but I just had heard that the process is the same. So I kind of knew that. I heard different real estate podcasts, and I went to Rocket Mortgage online, if that's still their name. I was online, made the phone call, and I talked to the gentleman, and he was like, no, it's only a duplex. It's only a duplex. That's it. And I'm like, are you sure? Because for like 3 years, I've been looking, you know, like I didn't say that, but I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, oh yeah, I've been doing this for 10 years. Yeah, that's all you can do. That's it.
Wow. See.
Is that what you want? And I'm like, no. Like, you know, and it made me mad, so I didn't go through him, because I just felt like he was not doing me the service like I had asked, and he almost made it seem like, and I get it, like I probably would have done the same thing, but he's like, are you questioning my intelligence? Like, I've been doing this 10 years, like, you know, and I didn't really like that. And so, yeah, I didn't end up doing it, but I mean, that's true, right? You could do 2, 3, up to 4, given the criteria is all there, right?
Right. Just kind of touch base on what you were just saying right now too. This is why it's a powerful thing for us to be on the broker side, and that's why I kind of say, hey, I can go to different banks. Some banks will have what's called an overlay. Overlay, you can say it's a rule, or like, hey, we don't do this specific thing. And so they might one of their overlays might be, hey, we only do up to 2 units.
Oh, them specifically.
Them specifically, yeah.
Oh, so he might have not been lying, but he wasn't telling me it's just them. He was saying,
right, which general. he could have easily.
Yeah, and I had asked him, so I'm glad you said that, because he's like, no.
Right, and so
nobody can.
Yeah. Well, see, he just wanted to earn his business the hard way.
Yeah,
the hard close is what I call it. But. You know,
you gotta do what you gotta do sometimes. But
you do
I'm
business.
not the one for that. No, I'm not the one.
That's why I say pick your service.
Yeah.
Take your service. But for the most part, yes, you can go up to 4 units, and believe it or not, that's only on the FHA loan. So if you go on the conventional side, then you start looking at bigger down payments.
Okay.
So especially the more units you add in. So, but 4 units is typically the max. After that, you start
considered commercial, right?
After that's 5. Commercial, yeah. And we start thinking of apartment complexes and stuff like that.
Okay. Speaking of apartment complexes, something I haven't talked to you about. I don't know if you want to mention it, but I heard you got a deal. I was talking to your brother the other day when I went to go get it in my car. Shout out Carlos. Can you plug his business name?
Yeah. I think it's called JS Smog. Yeah, I think he's still kind of playing with the name and everything, but JS Auto Smog and Repair. And
if you want to support local to Fresno, you got to talk to them.
Off of Jensen and Elm, next to the clinics over there. He can get your car fixed up.
Heck yeah, he's gonna take care of you.
Yeah,
they do the right thing.
Especially if you're out of warranty and like you just need a quick fix.
Or you have a high deductible.
High deductible. Yeah. Do the things. But absolutely, yeah. You can definitely get your car fixed up there. I always recommend tell everybody, hey, look, if you don't like going to a dealership and you want local family shop that can really take care of you, definitely go visit him. Even if it's just for an oil change, he'll take care of you. He'll let you know what's going on. And so.
Yeah, but I was talking to him, and he was saying because I noticed that you were getting into flips too. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
I was until I realized how much
goes into it.
It goes into it, and how much time it takes.
How involved were you in that?
So at the time, that one flip, not to dig too deep into it, but I did make a pretty good penny on that one, but it took a lot of my time and energy. It took 6 months. And the property still wasn't even ready, so I had to sell it on the deal was ugly.
What type of property?
It ended up, even though it was 3 units, it was listed as
Triplex. That's awesome.
It was listed as commercial though.
Why?
Just the way it was, and so
here in Fresno or
here in Fresno, whoever
they zoned it as commercial
themselves.
Zoned
it as commercial themselves.
What?
It could have been that
they probably ran a business or something. What do you think?
Or the land originally in which it was built on could have been intended for businesses, for commercial, and like
my first property right there on Van or Shields. Remember?
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah,
I didn't know
was commercial. Yeah, it was zone commercial.
Zone commercial.
I could have owned a business out of it. No, I could have ran a business.
It makes financing a little bit more tricky because again, back to the overlays thing.
Yeah.
Some banks are just flat out no.
At Okay.
I don't want to touch it. It's commercial. I don't want to touch it.
So they get the ultimate say, really. I mean,
they do, right? And but at the end of the day, they're in the right to say no.
Dang.
And so,
but that's awesome. No, nonetheless, I'm happy for you. I just wanted to shout you out on that because I know that that's a process in and of its own as well.
Right. And so what I tell everybody, it's just I equivalent to having 2 jobs. That's
fair. Yeah.
That's the best thing to say, because if you don't put any time to it, definitely it's going to make your life hell when you're trying to get stuff done.
Yeah.
More importantly, if you're trying to succeed in this business and that kind of stuff, I was already doing pretty well in this business, so I thought I could branch out to that, and then I realized it started affecting, my original bread and butter.
Your time.
Because you can only put, there's not multiple meals.
Yeah.
I understand. So many places and so
I feel the same way sometimes, for sure.
And so, so that made it harder, especially me being newer and not having a complete crew and that kind of stuff. So that definitely made it harder. And so thinking back to it, I mean, at the end of the day,
were you individually managing the
everything
team?
I did? Yeah.
Oh,
well,
dang.
I mean, and then that's the other thing too. I didn't have a full skill team, so I had to pay somebody to basically clean the property out, get the trash out. I had a bad tenant in there that I inherited.
Wow.
It was, just
how did you find the deal?
The client who owned the property, he came to me, wanted to buy a property, and he goes, "Will you guys buy property as is?" So it kind of fell on my lap.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's awesome.
It fell on my lap. So I maximized it at the end of the day, I still took care of him, and but that property needed a lot of work, also with the bad tenant. I mean, talk about, what do they call it, flip nightmares and stuff like that.
That was one.
That was one of them. I mean, one of the properties was, infested with bugs.
Oh.
I mean,
and then on top of that, what people probably don't realize too that we're talking about is, it's a triplex, all these great things, but it's more space. It's another unit. Like you have 3 units. I mean, I didn't flip my duplex, but I remodeled each unit, and bro, it's expensive. Each unit. Man, I took time in between each one too. So you doing it all in 6 months?
Yeah.
I can
Well,
only
that's
imagine.
the thing though. Like I didn't have to. I got fortunate enough where I didn't really have to do all that. Shout out to Miguel, the realtor.
Miguel?
He'd been in the industry years already, and I gave him the opportunity to list it for me. Because essentially that client I got from him, and you know,
okay.
You know, I kicked it back to him, you know, and so ultimately what I told him, I was like, you know, you can sell it for me. Like I only need a certain amount, you know, without having to fix it. Because at the time, you know, the market wasn't really calling for properties to be fixed so much. You know, in order to flip them, you can just throw them out there,
throw some lipstick on it, real quick,
and investors. Not even then, just make sure the trash is out, and you know, investors want to park their money, you know. You know, I told them, I go, I'm technically an investor, but I'm not parking money. So
you're trying to make it.
I'm trying to make it, yeah. And so he took care of me on that side of it. And so ultimately, I did have to get the trash out, meaning like the bad tenants, you know,
deal with all of it,
the garbage, all that stuff. And even then, that bad tenant took 4 months to get out, didn't pay me. Their unit was the worst one out of all of them. So when it
How long were they there?
From when I inherited them, or from
prior like living there?
I couldn't tell you.
Oh no, you didn't know.
Probably a year or more.
Oh shoot.
But when I inherited them, you know, it was like a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and there were 6 people living in there.
So
you know,
I can only imagine.
Yeah, and so like I mean, the family was struggling. You know, there was a little bit of drugs and other stuff involved. Boyfriend in and out of jail, stuff like that. But for the most part, they would say they were going to pay me rent. At that point, I was like, don't worry about paying me rent. Use that money to get out.
Yeah. Trying to help them out, yeah.
Try to use that card. That doesn't help. That doesn't work. They don't care. They'll milk it. COVID was involved, so, you know, there's all those, you know.
They didn't have to pay you technically, right?
They technically didn't have to pay me. And then, you know, they're protected with so many rights at that point.
I didn't know it was that long ago.
Yeah.
That's cool, though, honestly.
Yeah. And so then once... I wouldn't say it's fortunate. It was unfortunate the way stuff played out, but they wired that unit. They messed with the PG&E meter,
breakers and stuff
like that. So they were pulling free electricity. Yeah.
From where?
From the meter.
Oh shoot! So they would bypass whatever.
Because that triplex had the 3 units and it had a laundry unit. And so there was still power to the laundry unit.
No matter what.
And so they wired it. So when the property sold to me, the other 2 units were empty, and the city went in there and like, hey, we want to see if there's people here. You know, what's going on? Like, you know, what's going on with the property? Is it being abandoned? They just want to know what's going on. Because PG&E said, hey, look, there's still power coming out of there. And
what?
And so... Long story short, city shut it down.
They try to get you in trouble for that, or did they just?
Oh, they did. They gave me a fine because I'm the landowner.
Oh,
yeah.
So it was just one after another.
Well, I'm telling you, just one thing after another. You know, just because you buy something and it's a good opportunity doesn't mean it's going to be easy. You know?
Yeah.
Long story short, the city cut power and gas to the whole property.
All 3 units.
All 4 technically, because the laundry unit that was outside also had power. So there's 4 things being fed power. Cut power, electricity, gas was done. So the only thing it had was water. And even then I don't know how they did that. And so there was water there. And so, but they wouldn't leave. I mean, they didn't have anything. Midsummer, they wouldn't leave. They found a generator and set up shop outside.
Dang.
And still were trying to run power to the property. There's a will, there's a way, I tell you that much. And so ultimately the city came in and like, hey, you guys, we've already deemed the building unlivable.
Oh, so that they pushed them pretty much.
They pushed them out.
Thank God for the city.
Thank God for the city, but you know, it's unfortunate because there's 4 kids involved, and then 2 adults, but
that is rough, yeah.
And so,
and I mean, I never had anything to that extent, but when there's kids involved in a situation like that, like I had one of those in my Airbnbs when I first started. I mean, there was kids there, cops were called, it was hard, and it was just like, man. But yeah, nothing to this extent of, you know.
That's the other thing too. They get put into the system now, or at that time, and the way it's unfortunate, but like the way things are set up. I mean, if you really want to like dive into like things and you know who gets funding from the government, stuff like that, look into what's out there. And like when kids go into the foster system, follow the system and see how it goes. And like if you really have questions, that's something to really look into. I tell everybody. And so,
like how they're paid, or
Well, no, more of like government funds these things, but for the most part, how kids are pushed through the system and like where they end up and how they end up. And
so you're saying like, I mean, it's not essentially all good?
It's not all good, yeah. You got to remember there's so many people, and so they're trying to just,
collect probably.
One at a time, and, there's only so much,
Well, it's good that, I mean, you're thinking about that, though, because I doubt that was, like, what you were trying to do. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, I mean, shoot, you even told them keep the money.
I told them
find a place to live.
At one point, I offered them, $3,000. And
like cash for keys?
Cash for keys. Hey, look, I'll pay you $3,000 right now so you can find something else,
Yeah, I mean, it's just showing them, like, hey, I'm not trying to take your money. I want you to help, like, yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And so,
man. Well, hey, I mean, you got it done. Miguel helped you out. You said he listed the property. Shout out Miguel again.
Yeah, well, originally it came from his client, so I was like, I got to give it back to him. And so,
it's crazy. I mean, me and him known each other forever. And we got pictures together at Club Imperio back in the day, in our old days.
I still had hair. Yeah.
Back in the day. And it was funny when you started working here. You're like, hey, do you have that picture? Or I think, was it him or you asked me that?
I asked you that.
You asked me for the picture, and I'm like, yeah, you guys know each other. I introduced you years ago.
Yeah, you totally forgot about that, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Small world. But, hey, that goes to show.
Want to know how small this world is?
Yeah, what's up?
Adding to what you said, Miguel's from Madera, okay? My mom owns a salon in Madera for like almost 20 years now. My mom used to cut Miguel's kid as a kid.
His hair?
His hair, yeah.
Dang.
He even told me that mama every now and then my mom would do it for free because Miguel has an interesting story coming up in itself, and
he's actually somebody that is going to be pretty much up next.
Yeah.
It was between you and him. We played rock paper scissors. You won. No, but no. That just goes to show also, like, and I'm not saying I'm on your guys' level or anything like that. I'm just my own person, but when I look back at all of my friends, man, everybody's like up here in a good way, and I'm like, I love seeing that because it motivates me to see my friends killing it and keeping in touch with the true hustlers, bro. Like, there's something about it, like when you're not, and I'm not saying nobody's on that level or anything, I don't want to compare myself, but you need people like that because, I mean, you look at the 5 closest friends that you have, it's going to project a little bit of where you're. Yeah, so getting back, we had a little technical difficulty, but getting back to what I was saying about law of association, like the 5 core people you hang out with, or even just in general, like your circle, like if you really think back on where your friends are at, or not even friends, it could be acquaintances, anything in life, like you're going to be the sum of the 5 to 6, 10 closest people that are in and around your circle. So looking back around a lot of the people that I've been associated with, I've hopped around many different jobs. You've known, I mean, I'm somewhere every 2-3 years. Luckily, I've been in this space, home improvement, solar industry for about 6 years. It's like the longest time frame that I've been in anything.
Actually, yeah, that is.
Before I was hopping, I was an insurance agent for 2 years. I was in the car industry. I worked for AT&T. I've done a lot. And I've, like Steven, taken that experience and taking it to where I needed to go, right? But looking back at all of the top performers in every job I've ever been at, and other industries, looking back and looking at where those people are, I mean, they're top performers everywhere. And I've always commented like on, I want to say your stuff and even Miguel's, and I'm like, Miguel won some awards. We were talking about him a little while ago, and I was like, man, I always knew that he was there. And when we were at AT&T together, him and I were always competing against each other. But I learned from him. You know what I'm saying? He has a lot of wisdom. And as do you. And I mean, it's no coincidence that you two found and were working with each other at one point. You know what I'm saying?
Funny story. He's the one that actually recruited me and kind of like...
No way.
Yeah. And so when I met him, like, when I re-met him...
When you re-met him?
There's a funny story behind that. I won't get too into it.
No, it's all good.
When I re-met him, he was the one that was telling me, he's like, yeah, dude, he goes, come over here, and that kind of stuff. And at the time, I was still in the car business, and I'm like still trying to figure out the whole
what loans. You wanted to do, yeah.
Well, how to do the whole loan side of it, because they tell everybody, there's a process, and that's I wanted to figure that out before I jumped, somewhere. Okay. And I was in the car business, but the brokerage I was in was trying to show me how to do loans and that kind of stuff, and I learned by doing at the end of the day, just go out there, get the clients and get it done, And so long story short, I mean, he's kind of the one that kind of said, hey, come over here, and we'll do a lot of business together. And sure enough, to this day, we've done a lot of business together. And so I'm grateful for him and for that. And so,
man, that's awesome. That just goes to show too, like, it's who you allow, like, to basically mentor you. You know what I'm saying?
Well, he was on the real estate side. And so he was more of like, hey, look, mentorship in some way, but also like more so a teammate, or more of like, hey, we're a powerhouse together, you know.
Okay.
People come with us, get the best service, and you know, we can do that. We can assure that we can see everything all the way through the end. Me and him did I'm not gonna say names, but a client that had, you know, a BK in the past, and that came out of nowhere, and so we still got the file done, and we both hung in there, and so and being able to say we accomplished things like that, and so
helps the family out.
Help the family out, and so those are all things I kind of like. I'm grateful for him, and to this day, I still not only one of my best friends in the industry and in life, but for the most part,
That's awesome, man. Honestly, that's awesome. I like to hear that. You know what I mean? I feel like I'm responsible. No, I'm just kidding.
You get all the credit.
No, I don't want any of the credit.
There was that one night where we're all hung out. It was because of him.
No, not even. But nonetheless, man, it's been a pleasure having you on. I mean, I would imagine the audience, they're pulling all these different gems. He's filled with knowledge, wisdom about the industry. You can ask him literally anything. He's going to tell you some of the best options and guide you in the right direction. Like, he's filled with wisdom. 10, 11 years, 12 years plus of, auto industry, the mortgage industry, sales in general.
Credit.
He has a team, management, etc. Credit. Contact him. All of the information will be in the bio. But before we end this podcast, before we conclude, is there anything that anybody you want to give any special shout outs to, or anything that you want to maybe plug in before we conclude?
I definitely want to shout out everybody that I possibly can. So
absolutely,
in the broadest way possible, shout out to everybody that's been in my life, helped me along the journey, and then, become the person that I am, and been an influence in my life, because ultimately, the more you do any industry, any business, anything, you start realizing it becomes more about the people than it does the actual, the money of it and the product. Yes, you have to believe in the product. Yes, you have to have be wired a little bit different to want the money. But as long as you understand, take care of your people, and they will take care of you in the long run.
And I'm sure you like a lot of that is probably coming from the support from the people that you know, and absolutely, right. I feel that
everyone needs help at some point in life, whether they want it or not, and so. I always tell everybody, shout out your team. Keep them close. At the end of the day, you don't want to burn any bridges, and so.
Absolutely. Well, hey, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. If you have any further questions, please reach out. Again, I'll link all his information down below. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. And with all that being said, guys, remember, embrace now, doubt kills, and live your legacy. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Pleasure having you.